A quiet Texas street turned into a live courtroom when two imposters in tactical vests tried to detain a black homeowner. They walked with fake authority, flashing phony badges, ready to drag him out in front of everyone. But the man they picked wasn't just any resident. He was the FBI agent they never should have messed with. In seconds, the hunted would become the hunter, and what started as a stage display of power was about to explode into a lesson they would never forget. The Texas neighborhood was the kind of place people thought was safe. Manicured lawns, kids on bicycles, and neighbors who waved with forced smiles. But underneath the calm, there was always an unspoken tension. For Reginald Carter, a black homeowner who had worked hard to build his life here, the unease was nothing new. He had grown used to the sideways looks, the extra questions at the community meetings, and the whispers when he drove his car into the driveway. To the outside world, Reginald looked like just another middle-aged man who kept to himself. He rarely joined block parties or barbecues, and he didn't brag about what he did for a living. Few people knew that behind his quiet life was a man who had spent decades in the toughest corners of America, hunting criminals most people couldn't imagine. He was an FBI agent, one of the most respected and feared in the Bureau, but in this neighborhood, all that mattered was the color of his skin. To the HOA board and their self-appointed watchmen, Reginald was a target. They complained about his car being parked the wrong way, his grass being half an inch too long, or his family gatherings being too loud. And when petty notes and warnings didn't scare him off, they took things further. The plan was simple. Send in imposters dressed as law enforcement, corner him, and make it look official. They thought they could embarrass him, strip away his dignity, and prove he didn't belong. What they didn't realize was that they had chosen the wrong man, on the wrong street, at the wrong time. The two men in tactical vests walked with heavy boots that thudded against the quiet pavement. Their fake badges glinted under the afternoon sun, and their radios crackled with static to make the act look real. To the neighbors, it seemed like law enforcement doing its job. To Reginald, it was the oldest trick in the book. He stood on his porch, calm but alert, as the men barked orders. "Step outside! You're under investigation!" one of them shouted, waving a clipboard as if it held official paperwork. They expected panic, confusion, maybe even resistance. But Reginald didn't flinch. He simply looked at them the way a lion studies prey, silently, patiently, already 10 steps ahead. Inside, his years of FBI training switched on like a light. He noticed their mismatched gear, the way their patches didn't line up, the nervous twitch in one man's left hand. Real officers didn't move like that. Real officers didn't sweat this much under pressure. The neighbors, however, didn't see those details. They only saw a black man being targeted. Some whispered that they always knew something was off about him. Others quietly filmed, hoping to post the arrest online. The imposters counted on that. They wanted the humiliation to spread, for Reginald's face to become the subject of gossip and judgment. As the men closed in, Reginald raised his hands, not in fear, but in strategy. He wanted them closer, within reach. Every step they took onto his porch was another step into his trap. One of the imposters moved to grab him, but Reginald's voice cut through the air, low and steady. "Careful," he said. "You're trespassing on federal property." The men froze for half a second, caught off guard by the confidence in his tone. Federal property? What did he mean? This was just a house, wasn't it? The neighbors leaned forward, confused. Phones kept recording. The imposters recovered quickly, barking again for him to comply. But that brief hesitation was enough. Reginald had confirmed what he needed: their ignorance, their lack of training, their fragile cover. Slowly, he stepped off the porch, closing the gap between them. His posture didn't show fear. It showed authority, a kind the imposters couldn't fake. His eyes locked onto theirs, scanning every twitch, every breath, every false move. For the first time, the imposters felt something they hadn't expected. Doubt. They had come to intimidate. Instead, they were the ones being measured, weighed, and dismantled without a single punch thrown. And deep inside, Reginald knew this wasn't just about defending himself. This was about exposing them in front of every neighbor who had ever judged him, doubted him, or wanted him gone. The taller imposter reached for Reginald's wrist, thinking he had the upper hand. But before the grip could tighten, Reginald moved. With precision so sharp it stunned the crowd. In one swift motion, he twisted the man's arm, sending him stumbling forward, disarmed and gasping. The clipboard clattered to the ground, just a stack of blank papers inside. The second imposter fumbled for his radio, but Reginald stepped in fast. His voice dropped, calm yet commanding. "Put it down. Now." There was no hesitation in his tone. It wasn't the plea of a victim. It was the order of someone used to being in charge. And then came the moment that shattered everything. Reginald reached into his jacket and pulled out a leather badge case. With one deliberate motion, he flipped it open. The gold FBI emblem glinted in the sunlight, unmistakable and undeniable. The imposters' faces drained of color. Their fake bravado crumbled. They weren't just messing with a homeowner. They had just tried to arrest one of the most feared agents in the country. Reginald's eyes locked onto them, sharp as steel. "Impersonating federal officers," he said, his words cutting through the air like a verdict. "That carries 10 years. Minimum," the taller man stammered, trying to back away, but Reginald had already stepped forward, pulling a pair of real steel cuffs from his belt. With practiced ease, he snapped them onto the man's wrists, forcing him down onto the porch steps. The other imposter dropped his fake radio and raised his hands, trembling. The street was no longer a quiet neighborhood. It had become a stage where every hidden judgment, every silent suspicion now collided with the truth. The black man they had doubted, whispered about, and targeted wasn't a victim. He was justice itself. And he had just turned their trap into their downfall. By the time local police finally arrived, the imposters were already on the ground, cuffed and humiliated. Their fake uniforms were ripped, their lies exposed. Neighbors who had once whispered complaints about Reginald now stood frozen, their phones recording evidence that would spread across every screen in the community. The story of what happened on that Texas street wouldn't stay local. It would echo far beyond. The officers who pulled up barely needed an explanation. Reginald's badge carried weight, his reputation even more. The imposters were dragged into squad cars, their futures sealed with felony charges. But for Reginald, the night left a deeper mark than just another case closed. He looked around at the faces staring back at him. These were the same people who had doubted him, who had tried to paint him as an outsider in his own neighborhood. And now, in one unforgettable moment, their entire perception had been shattered. For Reginald, the arrest wasn't about pride. It was about proof. Proof that stereotypes fail, that judgment blinds, and that prejudice can lead people to make the biggest mistakes of their lives. Those two imposters had believed the lies of a community that wanted him small. Instead, they collided with a truth far bigger than themselves. As the streetlights flickered on and the police cars drove away, silence fell over the neighborhood. Some looked down in shame, others in disbelief. But one question lingered in the air, unspoken yet undeniable. How many more Reginalds walk among us, judged not for their worth but for their skin? The story of that night wasn't just about imposters in fake vests. It was about the cost of prejudice, the danger of assumptions, and the power of a man who refused to bow to either. If you've experienced or witnessed injustice, share your story in the comments. I might even make a video about it to raise awareness and justice. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video so together we can spread the message further.